At 4:57 a.m., a 21-year-old American college student stood in line to leave North Korea holding a passport that said he was free in a country that does not believe freedom exists. There was no shouting, no warning, no spectacle. A hand touched his shoulder. Two men in uniform spoke quietly. He stepped out of line, and in that instant, Otto Warmbier stopped being a tourist and became a prisoner of the state. Within weeks, the same young man appeared on North Korean television, sitting stiffly under harsh lights, calling himself a criminal, confessing to a crime so severe it allegedly threatened the spirit of an entire nation. His sentence, 15 years of hard labor. His crime, the attempted removal of a propaganda poster from a hotel hallway. That contrast alone should make you stop breathing, because this is not a story about vandalism or bad judgment or a college kid in the wrong place at the wrong time. It is a story about what happens when an ordinary human being collides with a system that does not recognize innocence, intention, or proportionality. Otto Warmbier did not disappear into a prison camp because of what he did. He disappeared because of where he was when he was there, and what his existence suddenly represented. Over the next 17 months, his name would be spoken by presidents, debated by doctors, weaponized by governments, and slowly erased by diplomacy. He would return home alive but not conscious and die days later without ever telling his story. What happened to Otto Warmbier is not just a mystery. It is a warning. North Korea is not a place you visit. It is a place you enter, and once inside, everything about you is quietly redefined. Travel there is not tourism in the Western sense. It is participation in a controlled environment where movement, conversation, and even curiosity are carefully managed. Every visitor is assigned guides. Every destination is curated. Every interaction is observed. What looks like hospitality is in reality choreography. Otto Warmbier did not arrive in Pyongyang as a provocateur or a rebel. He arrived as the most dangerous thing a closed system can encounter, a normal American operating on the assumption that the world functions everywhere the way it does at home. In the United States, symbols are flexible. Authority can be questioned. Mistakes are corrected, apologized for, laughed off. In North Korea, symbols are absolute. A poster bearing the supreme leader's name is not decoration, it is doctrine. Removing it is not mischief. It is an attack on the state itself. The Yanggakdo Hotel where Otto stayed embodies this contradiction. To foreign guests, it appears luxurious, almost playful, a bowling alley, restaurants, bars, a sense of controlled freedom. But the building is designed as an island, both literally and politically separating outsiders from the real country, while reminding them they are never fully alone. There are floors. You cannot access corridors. You should not enter rules you are expected to follow, even if no one explains them to you. This system does not rely on constant violence to maintain order. It relies on uncertainty. You are free until you are not. And when you cross an invisible line, the response is not proportional because proportionality is not the point. The purpose is deterrence, spectacle, and control. Otto did not misjudge a rule. He misjudged the nature of the system itself. In a place where symbols are sacred and power is personal, there is no such thing as a small mistake. The case against Otto Warmbier appears at first glance deceptively simple. North Korean authorities present two pillars of proof, a surveillance video and a confession. Together, they are meant to close the argument. But when examined closely, neither pillar stands on solid ground. The CCTV footage shows a dim figure in a brightly lit hotel corridor during the early hours of New Year's Day. The face is never visible. The body language is indistinct. A poster is removed from the wall and placed on the floor, not concealed, not destroyed, not carried away like a trophy. There is no urgency, no hesitation, no clear motive. Even the timestamp raises questions. Tour members later say the group had not yet returned to the hotel at the time the footage allegedly occurred. Others note how unusual it would be for a staff-only hallway to be fully illuminated in a country where electricity is rationed. On its own, the video proves only that something happened, not who did it. That gap is filled by the second pillar, Otto's confession. And it is here that the story begins to fracture. The confession is long, detailed, and unnervingly precise. Otto does not describe a drunken mistake or a moment of poor judgment. He describes a grand conspiracy involving a Methodist church, a secret student society, and the United States government itself. He claims he was promised money, a car, and career advancement in exchange for sabotaging the morale of the North Korean people. The narrative is complex, geopolitical, and perfectly aligned with the regime's worldview. Too aligned. Every institution Otto names later denies any connection. Experts on coercive interrogation recognize the pattern immediately. This is not how spontaneous guilt sounds. It is how compliance sounds. In authoritarian systems, confessions are not about truth. They are about usefulness. The goal is not to understand what happened, but to produce a story that reinforces power. Survivors of North Korean detention describe interrogations lasting up to 15 hours a day, relentless questioning broken only by propaganda films and isolation. Over time, reality blurs, resistance weakens. What remains is the instinct to survive. By the time Otto stands in court begging for mercy, the outcome is already decided. The confession does not seal his fate because it is credible. It seals his fate because it is convenient. Otto Warmbier's disappearance did not occur in a vacuum. It unfolded at a moment when the ground beneath global politics was already trembling. In the months surrounding his detention, North Korea conducted nuclear tests, launched long-range missiles, and openly defied international sanctions. The United States responded with threats of overwhelming force. Rhetoric hardened. Lines were drawn. And in the middle of this escalating standoff, a single American citizen quietly changed status. Otto was no longer just a convicted prisoner. He became leverage. The United States had no embassy in Pyongyang, no direct diplomatic channel, no legal framework through which to negotiate his release. Communication moved through intermediaries stalled by silence, misdirection, and delay. Each passing week increased uncertainty. No one outside North Korea knew where Otto was being held, what condition he was in, or whether he was even alive. And that uncertainty was not accidental. In geopolitics, ambiguity is a tool. A living detainee is useful not because of who he is, but because of what he represents. Otto represented pressure. He represented vulnerability. He represented a human face that could be placed on an abstract conflict. For North Korea, he served as a reminder of sovereignty and defiance, proof that the state could reach across borders and impose consequences. For the United States, he became a symbol of moral outrage, a story capable of mobilizing public opinion and justifying confrontation. Meanwhile, Otto himself vanished into the machinery of the standoff. His world shrank to interrogation's isolation and waiting. Time stopped moving forward and began pressing inward. Every day without news increased his value as a bargaining chip and decreased his value as a person. Silence became strategy. Delay became power. And as presidents spoke and absolutes and missiles rose into the sky, Otto remained unseen, unheard, and suspended in a conflict far larger than the hallway where this story allegedly began. At this point, whatever had happened inside that hotel no longer mattered. The case had escalated beyond guilt or innocence. Otto Warmbier was no longer on trial. He was trapped between nations, and neither side could afford to blink. When Otto Warmbier finally returned to the United States after 17 months in North Korean custody, the reunion that should have ended the story instead revealed its most disturbing chapter. He did not walk off the plane. He was carried out on a stretcher, motionless, his head shaved, a feeding tube taped to his face. His parents had imagined relief answers, perhaps even gratitude. What they encountered was silence. Otto's eyes opened, but they did not see. He breathed on his own, but he did not respond. Doctors would later describe his condition as unresponsive wakefulness, what was once called a vegetative state. Neurological scans showed extensive loss of brain tissue across all regions of his brain. Damage caused not by impact or repeated trauma, but by a prolonged lack of oxygen. This detail matters because it narrows the field while refusing to close it. North Korean officials offered an explanation: botulism from contaminated food, followed by a reaction to a sleeping pill. American doctors quickly disputed that account, finding no evidence of active botulism, or the kind of neurological pattern it typically produces. The family believed Otto had been tortured. Political leaders echoed that claim. But medicine remained stubbornly indifferent to narrative. The injury Otto suffered appeared to have occurred all at once, likely weeks after his sentencing, the result of a single catastrophic event in which his brain was deprived of oxygen. That could mean many things: a medical emergency left untreated, a reaction to medication, a suicide attempt born of isolation and despair, an accident inside detention, or something else entirely unseen and undocumented. What it almost certainly did not mean was prolonged physical abuse, which would have left a different neurological signature, and yet uncertainty offered no comfort. Otto lay surrounded by family, but he was no longer present in any meaningful way. 6 days after coming home, his condition worsened. He developed a high fever. His parents made the impossible decision to remove life support. Otto Warmbier died at 22 years old. He left the United States healthy and curious. He returned irreversibly broken. The absence of a definitive explanation did not soften the tragedy, it deepened it. Because when no single act can be identified as the cause, responsibility dissolves into a fog where accountability cannot reach. Otto's body came home. His story did not. After Otto Warmbier's death, the question of what happened to him did not settle. It fractured. In the United States, his story was immediately absorbed into a larger narrative, one that demanded clarity, villains, and resolution. For many, Otto became proof of North Korea's cruelty, a human illustration of an abstract enemy. His image was invoked in speeches, interviews, and headlines, reinforcing a moral contrast that required no nuance. In this version of events, uncertainty was inconvenient. The story needed to be clean. But while outrage traveled fast, answers did not. Medical findings remained inconclusive. Timelines blurred. Responsibility became diffuse. And as weeks passed, attention began to shift. Diplomatic priorities changed. New crises emerged. The same political machinery that had elevated Otto's case now quietly moved on. When relations between the United States and North Korea showed signs of thawing, Otto's name faded from official rhetoric. Not because the questions had been resolved, but because the narrative had lost strategic value. This is where the discomfort sets in. Otto did not disappear because the truth was hidden beyond reach. He disappeared because attention is finite and stories compete. In modern geopolitics, suffering does not guarantee permanence. Relevance does. His case reveals something unsettling about how meaning is assigned after tragedy. Facts matter, but framing matters more. The absence of certainty creates space for interpretation, and interpretation becomes a tool. Otto was used by one regime to demonstrate control and by another to signal moral outrage. When those signals were no longer needed, the story was allowed to settle into silence. What remains is not closure, but residue. A lingering sense that something essential was never addressed, that the human cost of political messaging is rarely accounted for once the message has been delivered. Otto Warmbier became a symbol, not because his story was understood, but because it was useful. And usefulness in the end is a fragile kind of remembrance. Otto Warmbier's story does not end with certainty, and that is precisely why it lingers. There is no final revelation, no definitive answer that resolves the discomfort his case creates. Instead, what remains is a lesson that resists simplification. Otto was not reckless, nor was he heroic. He did not seek confrontation or martyrdom. He sought experience, meaning, and the confidence that the world at its core operates on shared assumptions of fairness. That belief cost him everything. For an American audience raised to trust intention, due process, and proportional response, Otto's fate is deeply unsettling. It reveals a truth we rarely confront. Systems do not judge motives, they enforce rules, and some systems do not forgive ignorance. In North Korea, context outweighs character. Power outweighs proportion. And once you are absorbed into that logic, your identity no longer belongs to you. For communities focused on growth, travel, and self-improvement, this story cuts uncomfortably close. It reminds us that curiosity without context can be dangerous, that confidence born from freedom can become blindness elsewhere. Otto did not fail because he was careless. He failed because he assumed the rules were universal. His legacy is not a call for fear or isolation, but for awareness. The world is not flat morally or politically. Some environments do not offer second chances. Some mistakes are not allowed to be small. Otto Warmbier became a warning not because of what he did, but because of what his story exposes about power vulnerability and the limits of personal agency. His silence at the end is not empty. It asks a question that does not fade easily. How many lives are shaped, broken, or erased, not by malice, but by misunderstanding the system they stepped into?